There's something that happens when you're in a car with someone and a song comes on. Nobody says anything, but something shifts. You understand this person a little differently now, or you realize they don't understand you at all. No words, no explanation, just a song. The strange part isn't that this happens, it's how accurate it feels. Like 3 minutes of sound communicated something that months of conversation never reached. Researchers noticed this pattern too, and what they found was more precise than most people expect. Music taste isn't really a preference in the casual sense. It's more like a consistent signal, one that most people broadcast without realizing it. In 2003, two psychologists collected lists of 10 favorite songs from hundreds of strangers. Those lists were handed to a separate group, people who had never met the owners, and they were asked to describe the person behind the playlist. Not their job, not their history, their personality. The accuracy was significant enough to change how researchers approached music entirely. Strangers could reliably detect openness, emotional depth, creativity, and social orientation, just from 10 songs. Most people treat their music taste as something private, a corner of themselves that belongs only to them. But that corner tends to be more visible than they assume. The music someone returns to consistently reflects something stable underneath, something that existed long before the playlist was built. Researchers eventually mapped human music preference into 5 broad patterns, not genres, but behavioral dimensions. The first centers on mellow music, slow, soft, unhurried. People drawn here tend to be emotionally layered and attentive to others in ways that aren't always obvious on the surface. The second pattern, which researchers called unpretentious, covers acoustic and country sounds, simple structures, grounded feelings. People here tend to find something honest in the familiar. They're often quietly reliable. The third is sophisticated, classical, jazz, music that moves in unexpected directions. These listeners tend to be genuinely curious. Predictable structures lose their attention quickly. They follow complexity naturally. The fourth is intense, metal, punk, hard rock, and this is the one that consistently surprises people. The assumption is that aggressive or volatile personalities gravitate toward this music. The research says otherwise. People who prefer intense music tend to score high on gentleness in personality assessments. The music functions as a release rather than a reflection of temperament. It carries something they can't always say directly. The fifth pattern is contemporary, pop, rap, electronic, high energy, and built for shared experience. These listeners tend to move through social environments comfortably. They find something genuine in collective responses to sound rather than private ones. None of these patterns is more sophisticated or more valuable than another, but each one communicates something consistent about the person behind it. A researcher at Cambridge named David Greenberg found something that cuts across genre entirely. He identified 2 broad cognitive orientations that shape how people process experience. The first he called empathizing, a natural attunement to other people's emotional states. People with this orientation read emotional atmosphere easily. They tend to feel what others feel without being prompted. The second he called systemizing, a natural orientation towards structure, pattern, and internal logic. People here find satisfaction in understanding how things work. They're drawn to precision. When these orientations were mapped onto music preference, a consistent pattern emerged. People who score high in empathizing gravitate toward music with emotional weight, music that doesn't resolve cleanly, that sits with ambiguity, that takes its time. Not because they seek discomfort, but because this kind of music feels accurate to how complex an internal experience actually is. People who score high in systemizing gravitate toward music that is structurally intense, heavy rhythms, mathematical precision, sound that rewards close attention. What's notable is that genre becomes almost irrelevant here. A classical listener and a metal listener can share the same underlying cognitive orientation beneath completely different sounds. Music preference doesn't only reflect emotional life, it reflects how someone's mind tends to organize experience. Most people, when they're in a low emotional state, don't reach for music that pulls them upward. They reach for music that matches where they already are. There's a well-documented psychological pattern called mood congruence. When the brain is in a particular emotional state, it tends to seek input that aligns with that state. Not necessarily to remain there, but because alignment produces a sense of being understood. Sad music during sadness often functions less as a choice to feel worse and more as the brain finding something that fits. This becomes more interesting when you look at what people listen to when they're alone, not in a shared space, not with an audience of any kind. People manage most of what others see of them, what they communicate, how they present themselves, what they choose to share. Music listened to in private tends to escape that management entirely. It's one of the few behaviors that doesn't naturally adjust for observation. What someone plays when no one is watching tends to reflect emotional state and psychological need more accurately than almost any other signal. There's a specific period of life when music tends to leave unusually deep impressions. Roughly from early adolescence through the mid-20s, the brain is in a heightened state of identity formation. Experience during this window is encoded with more emotional intensity than in most other periods. Music heard during these years doesn't just get remembered, it gets anchored to the structure of who someone was in the process of becoming. This is why a song from that period can return a person almost immediately to an earlier version of themselves. The song was present during a time when identity was still being built. It holds something from that formation that almost nothing else does. Current music taste, then, isn't only a present moment preference, it accumulates. Every version of a person that has existed tends to leave something in what they listen to, songs that no longer get played, songs that still land the same way they always did, songs that became too close to something to hear comfortably anymore. All of it functions as a kind of record. Music platforms now do something with this that's worth understanding. Spotify, Apple Music, and similar services aren't only tracking preference, they're building behavioral models. Their systems can infer mood state, significant life transitions, and personality orientation with increasing accuracy, not from what users say about themselves, but from listening patterns alone. Minor key music played late at night carries different signals than the same music played in the morning. Sudden shifts in genre often correspond to something changing in a person's life. Listening behavior during grief, or the beginning of a new relationship, or a period of prolonged stress, each has a recognizable shape that repeats across millions of users. The pattern was always there. The platforms found a way to read it systematically. Music taste tends to get treated as a minor personal detail, something light, just what a person happens to enjoy. But the research, which holds across decades and across very different populations, points towards something more consistent than that. What someone listens to when no one is watching tends to be one of the more honest signals available about who they actually are. Not because music reveals biographical facts, but because what a person needs music to do reflects something stable, whether that's to carry emotional weight, to return them somewhere, to match a state they can't name, or simply to feel less alone in something they haven't found words for. That need doesn't perform for anyone. It doesn't adjust for the room. The music someone keeps returning to isn't only something they like,